Hey, welcome back to 48 Minutes or Less NBA Podcast, your weekly podcast for all things NBA, delivered to you in less than 48 minutes. I'm Louis. I'm Louis. Sorry, I forgot my own name. And joining me today is the big man in the middle, Sawyer, and manning the point of attack is George. Do you guys want to take a second just to say hi? Nice, guys.
No, I don't actually. Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, guys? Glad to be back.
Well, so a lot's kind of happened the last week or so in the NBA since we last recorded. Mainly, a lot of players have been getting injured. Not a lot, but like a lot of key players to teams have been getting injured or suspended. So we kind of want to take a little bit to talk about these guys and how this could affect their team moving forward, and as well as them moving forward and any momentum they might have going into the season. So kind of the first injuries that I want to talk about they're not like super severe, but it was to two Toronto players. It happened last Friday in the Toronto versus New Orleans game. That day, Lowry fractured his distal phalanx on his left thumb, so pretty much he broke his thumb, or fractured it, I guess. And he's expected to miss at least 2 weeks, and then he'll be reevaluated, which my guess would be putting him back on day-to-day status. And then Serge Ibaka is currently out indefinitely with a sprained ankle, and he currently has no timetable for return. I just want to get you guys' opinions on kind of what this means to Toronto, especially considering they do have the Monday game against Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers, which was a pretty important game, I'm guessing, for Toronto.
George, you can go first.
It's better for you to go first because you always say something that pisses me off.
Aw, I love you too, George. I mean, I think both injuries are pretty significant somewhat significant, not nearly as significant as they could have been. I feel like honestly the sprained ankle might be worse. Like, I think that might be kind of weird.
Yeah, considering it was severely sprained.
Yeah, just because a lot of times those can linger. Sprained ankles can linger for a little while, and if you're not careful, that can injure something else. The thumb, yeah, it sucks because the thumb is broken, but I mean, I'm pretty sure he shoots right-handed, and I really don't think it'll affect his shot or anything too much. So I definitely feel like Ibaka's injury is more significant, but the way they've been playing lately and stuff, but just not with only playing like 8 people a game, something like that, like. They don't really have a lot of depth behind Lowry and Ibaka, and that can definitely hurt them in the long run.
Yeah, I actually, the next coming weeks are probably going to be pretty interesting for Nick Nurse from the Toronto Raptors to see kind of where he goes now. And maybe see if any of the other non-rotation piece players steps up, and then they can actually raise their rotation to be more than just 7 players. I mean, he just lost 2 big rotation pieces, so we'll see where it goes. As far as their place in the Eastern Conference, I'm not too worried. I think with Fred VanVleet, Marc Gasol, and Pascal Siakam, I think they still have a solid
you're not going to forget about Pascal Siakam, man. Oh my God.
Nah, that spicy P. I want that curry, baby.
And OG, I can't say his last name,
Anunoby.
He's really good as well. But I mean, when you lose 2 players that are playing like 32 plus minutes a game or something like that, those minutes have to go somewhere.
No, and I think it's what George said. It could actually be a good it could just be good for the team because they might be able to find guys in their deeper end of the rotation they can actually produce. And then, considering Nick Nurse was playing Kyle Lowry close to 38 minutes a game before the injury, and for a guy that's nearing, what is he now, 34, a point guard of his age playing that amount of minutes, a great toll on his body, and it could eventually come into effect either next year, since they just extended him to that massive contract extension, at least it's 1 year, or even into playoffs. So hopefully they can find some hidden gems and then be able to get Kyle Lowry under 35 minutes a game.
Yeah, I mean, it like last year, Denver had a lot of injuries going on, and the fact that because of those injuries, they were able to find a lot of players to figure out what exactly they had depth-wise. And I feel like that probably helped them come playoff time. I mean, of course, they still lost in the semifinals, but it still helps to know who you have on your team. And a lot of times, a lot of players don't get enough minutes for you to really see if those players are good enough.
And I guess come playoffs, most rotations get down to around 7, 8 guys. So at least for the regular season, if Nick Nurse can find some potential in some of these guys in the deeper end, and then be able to rest his main starters a little bit more into the season, and
so they could be more ready for playoffs.
It doesn't hurt either that they've had a pretty good start to the season as well. So it's not like a few, maybe possibly, not saying they will lose, but having an extra loss or two as opposed to what they would have had, it's not going to affect them nearly as much as like, instead of being like, I think they're like 6-2, something like that. If they were like 2-6, that might be a little more significant. Again, only 6-2, but like it's still only 8 games into the season. But
yeah, but it's the East. I'm pretty sure a YMCA basketball pickup group would have a pretty good start to the season against the East.
You think you'd have a good start?
Nah, not me.
So I guess another team that has also started really well, but they did suffer a big major injury to what could arguably be said has been their best player, or at least their most consistent player so far this season. Comeback player of the year was Boston Celtics' Gordon Hayward, who broke his left hand versus the Spurs last night. He collided with Aldridge and I guess just busted his entire left hand. Currently, they haven't released anything because he's going to go see a specialist on Monday, and then they will determine if he needs surgery or not, and then that will give a timetable. Brad Stevens did say that at least a month is what he's expected based on his view of the injury.
And that really hurts like himself too, just because he's been having such a good season, gaining that confidence back. Last year was just a year to shake off all the rust that he missed in the previous year. And this was supposed to be the year he could like come back and finally be Gordon Hayward again, the guy who we all knew he was in Utah. And then that's got to be so demoralizing to have happen to you. It's just a freak injury. It's not even, it's just a freak injury. Nothing he could really do about it.
Yeah, the way Gordon Hayward was playing, if you had Gordon Hayward, you have Kemba Walker, you have growth from both Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and you're able to find a decent center, maybe in the buyout market or maybe a trade.
Ernest Cantor's been hurt. Once he comes back, he might be pretty good, but I'm pretty sure he's been hurt.
Yeah, but Enes Kanter is not your finals contender answer, and the Time Lord might be great, but he fouls like crazy. Like, they're not good enough to take you to that step. I'm saying if you can somehow get like a guy like how the Toronto Raptors did last year with getting Marc Gasol, if you could get another piece.
Steven Adams would probably be the name I would think would come up.
The problem is Steven Adams' contract. How do you match that? He's $27 million or so for the year. I have heard Dwayne Dedmon floating around, considering he hasn't been working that great with over in Sacramento. That could be another possibility, but he's making $13 million, so
maybe they trade for Aaron Baines, get Aaron Baines back again.
I don't.
Dwayne Dedmon as the center for the NBA 2020 champions.
Do you really think the Celtics are going to be? My thing, how do you think Gordon Hayward is? I don't think, like, when Gordon Hayward returns, I don't think he's going to, like, miss a step so much physically. It just might be on the mental aspect, considering he's finally getting his group back, and then, boom, life just throws a rock in his way, or an ass, right, in his way. And then, like, losing that momentum, after a while, that starts affecting you mentally, especially when you're constantly being injured, and you're constantly in recovery mode, and you finally think that you're back, this is the game you love, and you're finally producing at the level that you were producing your entire career, and boom, it's got to affect you mentally.
I actually think that the injury also doesn't help with the fact that I think the Celtics have finally started playing together the last couple of games.
Yeah, they're 6-1. Yeah,
they've actually been starting to kind of like find a groove with each other. And again, this just hurts them even more. They can't build that chemistry up. So Gordon Hayward's injury is pretty significant and stuff. But I feel like Zach Collins and his injury, that's 4 months they're going to be without him in Portland. And they already don't have a lot of depth at forward.
Does anybody in the league have depth on forward? That's kind of a big question.
Yes. The Clippers.
The Clippers have depth of every position except center.
Actually, the Clippers have this forward that's a pretty good rotation piece. I don't remember what team he was playing for last year, but he was traded for like scraps,
You mean
right?
Heartless?
What's his
Is
name?
Is it Heartless? No,
Harkless.
Harkless.
Harkless, yes, Mo Harkless.
Sorry, I was being facetious
About what?
by calling him Heartless.
That's
Yeah,
only
or
went over my
God damn
head.
it, there's another forward that there's another team that has a shit ton of forwards. But they have like no good point guards. The Magic.
Oh, you're right. What's their new forward they got off the bench? What's his name?
Alfred Camino?
Yeah, that's it. Alfred Camino. I wonder what team he was on.
Portland. No, but I mean, like, for instance, I think it was like a couple nights ago or just last night, something like that. Like, Lillard put up 60 points in a loss. And then the next highest score was like Alfred Simmons or something like that with like 15. And then there was somebody else with like 10 points.
Yo, that boy is good.
Yeah, he was the second leading scorer on his team in the game. He's amazing.
Are you talking about Damian Lillard or Alfred Simmons?
Afrani, how do you pronounce his name? Anthony?
No, it's like Anfrey.
Afrani?
Afrani.
I think it's Anthony.
Anthony Simons,
Simmons.
guys. Anthony
Simons.
Simons.
Anthony Simons.
I do apologize to that guy.
I
I'm
was-
sorry for butchering your name.
Again, I was being
again,
facetious.
that should mean a lot, though. Oh, you were?
No, his name's actually pronounced Anthony Simons, but I was messing around
Okay.
with you.
regardless, like, you know, like the next person was like with 10 points was Whiteside, and like McCollum had such a god awful night, and he hasn't had a great year at all.
No,
So
he
far.
hasn't. And like, it's kind of sucks because I actually listened to, if you guys want a great podcast, Pull Up with CJ McCollum. And you know, he's always so like talks about.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Is it called the pull up, or is you want them to pull up?
It's the Pull Up podcast with
podcast.
CJ McCollum. I'm not.
I'm just messing with you.
Yeah.
I'm messing with you.
Okay, so now you're Now you're doing it to me.
Come on.
So he talks about like taking care of his body and a lot of that, and he really does put a lot of work on the off season into his body and eating right. And it's just like he's always like he might be one of those players that's really good in the playoffs and not so great in the regular season at this point. Because that's like last year he wasn't very good in the regular season either. So, and if McCollum isn't producing and it's just Dame, at a certain point the Blazers are going to be looking on the outside looking in, right?
Yeah, especially with how deep the West are.
The Blazers definitely need to make a trade before the trade deadline. And, I mean, you have to go for broke right now. The league is not going to be as wide open as it is now. The Lakers and the Clippers are looking pretty strong. But, I mean, it's still pretty open season. I mean, you have to go for a forward. And there are a couple forwards that I think are in the trade block or trade talks.
You know, Kevin Love. Like, you're going to go for broke for a guy like Kevin Love? I mean, maybe. You go for broke for a guy like, you know, Gallinari?
So they
Possibly.
I think they each have their pros and cons. I mean, outside of just looking at how they would fit into the team.
I could tell you one. I could tell you they have the same con. Injury prone.
Injury prone and no defense. Those are they both have the same main cons.
Would you rather trade for Kevin Love or trade for Gallo?
Kevin Love for his ability, but Gallinari for his contract.
Wait, do you think Kevin Love is a better basketball player right now than Gallinari? Because
Yeah.
I
agree.
think
No,
he is.
I think
I
he
think
is.
he's a better passer. He's a better rebounder. He can offer a lot of the things that Portland needs. I think as a basketball fit, he's a better fit.
Yeah, but we're talking about a contract that still needs 4 years.
But
That's my point. I said Kevin Love as a player, as a basketball player, he's better, but I would take Gallinari for his contract.
But let me ask you guys. I mean, they just extended both CJ and Dame. I mean, that Kevin Love contract is going to be running alongside those contracts.
sure. Exactly.
So, like,
That's
if
my
they're
point.
already going for broke by extending Dame and CJ to those contracts, they're already going for broke. You might as well just say, what the hell, and just go for it.
Yeah, but don't go for. I wouldn't go for Love. I honestly think if you're trying to trade, I feel like Cleveland, considering the fact they don't have a lot, they're gonna actually ask for more than OKC would ask for Gallo, because OKC would rather get something than just lose Gallo in the offseason. And so you trade for Gallo, then you have bird rights on Gallo. And next year, there's not a lot of contending teams that are looking for to have the cap space. And how many people want a 30-year-old small forward So, I mean, Portland has a pretty good shot of retaining him if they trade for him next year.
I mean, I see an easy situation here. You know, Steven Adams goes to Boston. Somebody random goes to OKC, and then OKC trades Gallinari to Portland, and Portland gives them Whiteside. There we go.
Yeah, but then
OKC's not going to the playoffs.
Yeah, but like, what do they get out of what? Like, they can
Some first round.
No. I
round
mean, what I mean is like,
protected pick or
they need Whiteside because Nurkic, he's gonna come back in the later half of the season. He's probably not gonna be ready to start. So, because they're also pretty weak in the center rotation as well. My thing is, most teams want at least the only thing of value that Portland can give them in terms of these rebuilding teams are talent. Is so if you can say his name, please. He scored 15 points.
Ephraim Simons. Ephraim.
It's like Anthony with an F.
Yeah, Anthony Simons.
Anthony Simons.
So and
just
Portland,
record this over the other bit.
Yeah.
Then we'll be all good.
No, I'm not gonna edit it. You're gonna look ridiculous.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Pathetic. Back to my point. Portland is really adamant about not giving up Anthony Simons, but which does make sense because if you're Portland right now, this is your time to go and try to get and try to win the championship. You're not thinking about 5 years in advance. If you were thinking about 5 years in advance, you wouldn't have locked yourself into these massive contracts, right? So, if I'm Portland, trade Anthony Simons for Gallinari, and whatever pick they have, trade it for Gallinari, and then whatever you need to match salaries, and get that man on your team. On another note, could you imagine a Nurkic Love pick and roll, considering the way that they're right now working? Kevin Love's working the pick and roll with Tristan Thompson. That'd be a deadly combination.
Especially with having Lillard there too, who you could pass it out to.
Yeah.
Like, come on. No, I mean, I think basketball wise, I think Kevin Love is a great fit for them. They're just so caught up with other players that I just don't realistically see them coming out of the deal, any kind of deal better. You know what I mean? In terms of what they would have to give up.
They would have to give up more for Love too, I think, because I mean, Anthony Simons to
the contracts
Cleveland
don't
doesn't
work.
seem as good.
Well, the contract doesn't work either.
Well, they would have to give up Whiteside
To match.
Exactly.
Yeah, to match. Yeah.
They would have to give up somebody like him.
But then giving them Whiteside, they're probably going to have to give up more for him than Gallo.
I mean, I would almost say do something along the lines of if you trade Simons and McCollum for Love and include a first round pick.
I don't think they would trade
I feel
McCollum.
if you did something like that. No, exactly. But I'm saying something like that would be a little bit better because Rodney Hood could play shooting guard.
Is Kevin Love better than McCollum?
Is Kevin Love
No.
better than McCollum? I mean,
I wouldn't trade
right
McCollum.
now,
I wouldn't trade McCollum for Kevin Love, considering Kevin Love's injury history. You're making your team worse by doing that.
I mean, I realistically can see the Cavs thinking that adding McCollum and getting rid of Kevin Love's contract is probably more worth it to them. Possibly, if it includes a first round pick.
Let me ask you guys a real quick question. I want to get your honest opinion on this. If the Blazers find a way to have Dame, a good healthy Nurkic, CJ McCollum, and then they get either Love or Gallo, can you honestly say to me that they're going to be better than either the Clippers or the Lakers?
No, not at all. Not in my opinion.
George?
No, but they have a shot.
They have as much a shot as I believe the Spurs. No, not the Spurs. Sorry, they have as much a shot as I believe the Rockets have a shot of actually making it to the finals.
So you mean they got a puncher's chance?
Yeah. If things click on all cylinders and they somehow win 4 out of 7 games, it's possible.
I think right now they have a 1% chance of being NBA champions. I think if they could get Kevin Love or Gallo, they might have a 20% chance.
That's a little high.
To be...
Are you saying to make it to the finals or champions?
No, not a 20% chance to win the whole thing, but I mean a 20% chance to beat the Clippers in a series, or to beat the Lakers. Okay. Not a 20% chance of per series against the contending teams. They have right now. I think they have a 1 in 100. If they face the Clippers 100 times, once they'll beat them. In a 7-game series.
If you guys are talking, they have a 20% chance or a puncher's chance. Then why do the trade?
Because then you have nothing.
and also then they're more likely to possibly beat them. It's all about giving a chance. Like if like you can't say don't give it a shot. I feel like with Gallinari, his contract, if I'm not mistaken, is only for another maybe year or two, if that. So I mean, you're not really losing a lot when you give up something for Gallinari. If Kevin Love is a completely different story. If you don't even make it to the conference finals, then it was an awful 100% worst trade ever. Not worst trade ever, but one of the worst trades you can make.
That's why I think maybe Gallo's the smarter choice, because if it doesn't work, guess what? You don't have to re-sign him. You don't have to keep paying him. Right.
Yeah, and they also have the idea of the fact that, like, because Nurkic was hurt, they also have this. There could be this mentality of he was hurt, so that's why we didn't get far, or that's why we didn't win.
Like last season, they made it to the Western Conference because they had a favorable side of the bracket. So they thought they were really better.
And Denver choked a little.
And Denver choked, exactly. Not to say, like, I don't take anything away from CJ and Dame. They're both incredible basketball players.
No, that was a great series to watch.
But they did have a favorable matchup that they didn't have to go up against either. They didn't have to go up against Houston or the Jazz or Golden State to the Western Conference Finals. Now my thing is, I'm not sure if they will have that. If they do make the playoffs, I'm not sure if they'll get that favorable matchup, especially if they have to go up against a team like, say, the Clippers, who are expected to get their second star later on this week. So currently, Paul George is ahead of schedule and is expected. Early reports say maybe Monday's game, but he said that he might be expecting to debut actually on Thursday or so. What do you guys think this means for the Clippers moving forward? Finally have kind of see these two guys together on the court.
I think it's huge for the Clippers just because, there's gonna be some growing pains for sure. Just getting him into the rotation, he hasn't played with any of these guys yet in a real game setting. But I think so far with the introduction with Kawhi Leonard and everything that has seemed pretty smooth for the most part. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that this team is like still the same team somewhat from last year. There's a few different pieces, but like you still have Lou Will, you still have Patrick Beverley, and you still have Harrell and stuff. So you still have a couple of like solid pieces that were already there playing together. And I think that helps. And that's, I think, what they have over the Lakers in terms of that togetherness right now. But that doesn't mean as much now as it means later on. But I do believe they'll probably have him on like a minutes restriction for sure, and some load management and stuff like that to help make sure that he's good and ready for the playoffs, because that's what they care about. That's the whole point of load management, is making sure they're healthy for the playoffs, really.
3 words: Paul George who? Here's a really hot take, guys. Paul George is a scrub. Actually, here's a harder take. Paul George is DeMar DeRozan that can shoot threes. That guy has never beaten LeBron once. All jokes aside, I actually agree. It's going to be nice to bring him back. Though I'm a little worried because they said sometime in November, and I'm a little worried with him coming back too early.
George,
Maybe,
it's November.
Yeah, but like normally when they say November, they mean like the end of the month.
George, they said the middle of November.
I just don't want him to come back too early. I don't want him to feel rushed. I just don't want him to re-injure himself because I want a healthy playoffs. And so, hopefully they put him on a minutes restriction. I don't want him to feel like he has to be rushed back. They don't really need him to be rushed back. But overall it's going to be nice, and hopefully like we're going to be seeing them by Christmas at the peak of their powers when they go up against the Lakers, unless Kawhi Leonard just wants to take the day off. But hopefully by then we'll see them at the peak of their powers. I think Clippers are the favorite team to win.
I think it's honestly, I feel right now though, I feel it is easily a toss up between the two, between the Lakers and the Clippers.
Until we see the Lakers and the Clippers again and see how well the Lakers fare. Because last time it did not go well for the Lakers. I can't tell.
Yeah, but they have now won like 7 straight.
Yeah,
like that.
and granted, that's why it was the first game of the season. The Clippers did away with the Lakers without Paul George. That's why we'll wait for Christmas. Although Christmas is usually not a very good indicator, because teams kind of don't play to the best of their ability on that day.
I mean, I think we just need to see the way that the Clippers in general play with Paul George and seeing that team with him.
And the Lakers do have the advantage that they will, if they go up against the playoffs, they will have 7 home games.
Yeah, that's true. No, I mean, I think the biggest thing is making sure that he's like you said, George, making sure he's healthy, and you don't want him to be ready for the playoffs, and having a minutes restriction as he's coming back is obvious what a lot of teams do, but I mean, I want to get your guys' take on like load management in the NBA right now. It's a topic that's been talked about for a few years now, and it's starting to come back again with Kawhi Leonard and stuff like that. Overall, do you feel like it's a good or a bad thing going forward for the NBA?
So I think that if we were to look at load management as a player wants to extend career, team wants player healthy for playoffs, right? I think it sucks if, say, so like we live in Florida, right? So we can only see some of these Western Conference teams. Like my favorite player in the NBA, my 2 favorite players in the NBA are Damian Lillard and LeBron James, right? I can only see those guys twice a year. And really, I can't see LeBron because Lakers tickets are too expensive, right? So if those guys started taking days off and they just happen to choose the game when they come to Florida to take off, that would really suck for me, right? But at the same time, as a fan of basketball in general, I would rather they take that game off and actually be able to play in the playoffs and not be injured, because I'd rather not see them than them being injured for being overworked and then miss 3-4 months out of the season. So I think overall my outlook on load management is that it's a good thing.
Yeah, but a lot of times too, like the argument against it too, a lot of times is like you can get injured in a game, any game. It's all the idea is that you're limiting the risks of it, and a lot more times people have injuries in back-to-back games.
Well, I mean, the idea of taking load management is that you're not exerting your body, so you're resting it. So like a jump that you do, like let's say you go for a dunk and you land on one foot. In November, you might not get an injury, but you do that same jump in February and your body's been so exhausted of months of playing, of months of practice, of months of exerting physical force all day, that same jump and that same land is going to break your foot. So the idea of load management is to almost like a preventive issue. So, I mean, I personally don't really have an issue with load management, but it sucks, especially if you're like a little kid and you're wanting to see these players.
And honestly, a lot of people confuse that like load management isn't like, oh, they're just going to take this game off and then everything else is normal. A lot of times load management determines how often they should work out, practice, travel, and everything else that goes into the game as well. It's not just the minutes. It's other things as well.
So you know how the NBA put the thing that like players can't rest unless they're actually an injury report, which is how Kawhi Leonard gets away with it because he's put on injury report, right? They can't rest on national televised games, right? How about if the NBA said that
it's $100,000 fine?
Yeah. How about if the NBA say players can no longer rest in away games, only in home games? Would that help with the situation? Because that would help fans be like, oh, not have to worry that their player is going to be out for that specific game. Well, when you pay like hundreds of dollars to see LeBron James play.
I mean, actually, it matters. A lot of times it matters, though. It's whoever they're playing against. A lot of times, a lot of people don't necessarily choose a game because they want to see a player on their own team. A lot of times they choose a specific game to see players they don't normally see.
Exactly. So, like, have them do their rest days on home games so that, like, fans can still see. So, like, if I buy a ticket, maybe Vucevic sits out. Yeah, I can go watch Vucevic every single night.
But if it's Antetokounmpo and Kawhi Leonard, it's the Clippers versus the Bucks. You're going to purchase a ticket to that game because you want to see Kawhi Leonard go up against Antetokounmpo.
Or how? I guess so. I mean,
that's what a fan chooses. The fans choose to do that. But then the fact that they rest him in a way. But I mean, you can't just say that because a lot of times it's like I said, it's not just playing the game. It's everything else that goes in the game, like travel and stuff.
I don't think load management has become a huge issue. I think it seems like a big issue right now because Kawhi Leonard's sitting out on nationally televised games.
And then Doc Rivers said that he felt great, that he feels great. Like Kawhi Leonard feels.
I mean,
great.
the Doc Rivers fine was ridiculous. Like Doc Rivers was saying, like, yeah, I mean, he feels great, like he's good to play. Like I don't think he meant it in any way. I think that fine was ridiculous, and that's a bad look for the NBA. But that's besides the point. It's because they're nationally televised games because no one cared last year when he was playing for Toronto. Like it's only because it's nationally televised games, and it just so happens. But I mean, if you're a fan of Kawhi Leonard, then you should know that Kawhi Leonard sits on back-to-backs. That being said, I think there has to be a better way for it to be like done, like the ticket sellers have to be like, hey, there's a big chance that someone's gonna rest tonight, or stuff like that, or just fix the main issue. Why are players demanding load management? Why are players resting more? Because the NBA season is too long and the games are too long.
So I guess the argument against that is like old heads will talk about how like back in their day they would play 48 minutes a game, they would play plus 40 minutes, they would play all 82 games.
And there's also the travel was a lot worse back then as well.
Yeah, and travel was, and they're like, if we could do it, why can't these young guns do it, right? And then that's what they call, I guess, this new generation soft. I mean, granted, if you look at stats and you look at the way the game was played back then, it's a completely different game. Because our players today, right, they have to defend in space, right? So back in Will Chamberlain's time, he could literally stand in the dunker spot on defense, or in Jordan's time when most of the game was held through isolation play, right, in illegal defense, you would never really have to leave your man. But today, with the constant switching, the fact that you have to go constantly out to the three-point line, like watch a game and you can see a player on defense run to the top of the key, to the three-point line, to the dunker spot, back to defend in space, and they do all that in one possession.
No, yeah, I completely agree.
So like they're exerting a lot more energy, right? And that is wear and tear on your body. And that's part of the reason why these players nowadays are more tired. What we're seeing, I think that's part of the reason why a lot of our star players are getting more injured, and you see more injuries being more common.
Well, I mean, I have a few stats I like to say in terms of like the fact. Okay, so last season, the average NBA team played every like 2 days. They played a game about every 2 days. All right. They had about 13 back. They had about an average NBA team had about 13 back-to-backs. That's actually lowered this year. It's about 12. That's something they're working on, is limiting those back-to-back games. But they also, and I think this one is also really big as well, is that they flew the equivalent of 250 miles a day for 25 straight weeks. Flew a day, 250 miles a day for 25 straight weeks. And
that's a lot of flying.
And just to give a shout out to where I found that information, to Baxter Holmes on his article on ESPN.com. Right? Yeah. That one was more about like sleep deprivation and the issue that takes. But I thought those stats right there are pretty interesting when talking about load management. Like this is why there's the idea of load management. They want these players to be healthy because this is what they have to deal with. There's so much travel. Like they actually travel. An NBA team travels 20,000 more miles in during the playtime than the NFL does, for instance.
Yeah, well, I mean, the NFL plays like 13, 14 games a season?
16, right?
16 games.
16 games a season?
Noob.
I do not follow the NFL. That game is brutal. Those players are all damaged.
I'm just saying that the sheer amount of miles that they travel is just ridiculous. But you can't really like take that away in any way unless unless scheduling is the only way to fix that, in terms of how far they travel from game to game, especially if they're back-to-back away games.
Take the NBA season. I mean, so Kawhi Leonard is sitting. Kawhi Leonard is if he doesn't play any back-to-back games, that's 13 games this year that he will not be playing officially, right? They have 13 back-to-backs. How many games are there in a season?
82, so it would be about 69 games.
69, baby. That's the magic number.
I think what they're doing in terms of trying to limit the amount of back-to-backs is pretty good. If they even if they pushed back or extended the NBA season another week, either push it back or reduce it. You know what I mean? Like reduce in terms of like bring it backwards or push it forwards, making it longer.
There has been talks about starting the NBA season in September instead, but I'm not a fan of that because these players travel the almost like 10 months out of the year, 9 months out of the year. Like, so we're gonna take even more time away from their families.
Yeah, that's why I see. That's why I see like a week, like especially if they reduce like preseason. If they cut preseason even more by a few days, which they've already done, is why they've already cut down on the number of preseason games as well.
So one of my things is I know why they don't want to drop the NBA season to like 70 or 65 games or something because of money.
Of course, it's understandable.
But why not at least cut the games and start and make them 40 minutes like you do in college? Why not just make them 40-minute games? It's going to be great because it's less time to watch basketball. So, I mean, I love basketball, but like the games can get pretty long.
A game is normally like 2-3 hours, 2.5 hours.
I think the game should be
halftime?
2 hours max. I think the game should be 2 hours max.
The game is about.
But I'm talking about you have Kyle Lowry right now playing 39 minutes a game. You could have these guys playing 28, 27 minutes a game starters, and that's load management in its own because they're playing less.
I guess
that changes the nature of the game though when you talk about changing the minutes.
No, it doesn't.
It does. It changes.
They do it in college. How would it change the game? What changes?
It would. The only thing it would affect would be
strategy changes.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it would, George, because you're removing 8 minutes of the game. So it's the idea of like when do you go to your specific sets? When how does that affect timeouts? How does that affect it would change the game, and it would also, I think the main reason behind that would be like it would change traditional stats and the like, oh, now players are gonna add like the guys who are averaging 27 points are now gonna be averaging 20, stuff like that, because there's less time in the game.
That makes the game that might make the game less interesting.
Like for me personally, part of the reason why I don't watch college basketball is because like it's like, what is it? The other day was it Virginia game that it was like 46-38. That was the final score. Like, dude, I watch basketball because games can go up to 140 points, right?
I don't watch basketball because games can go up to 140 points. I watch basketball because players are good. So it doesn't matter to me. I used to watch basketball in 2010 where games were like barely crossing 100. They're like 100, 110 was a high score. I don't watch basketball to see a shootout when no one plays defense. I want to watch basketball because I want to watch star players play, and they're being overplayed and they are getting injured. And every season I see 1 or 2 or 3 of the league's top 30 players out for the season or out for a couple of months.
Yeah, but a lot of times those happen though. You can't really there's a lot you can't completely prevent there to be absolutely no injuries. That's not possible. There's every year there's always going to be an injury that is just awful. You're just like, are you serious?
I haven't done any research at this, but I feel like in the last couple of years we're seeing more star players injured than ever before. Maybe I should go and do some research, but it just seems that way to me. And these kids coming into the league are playing like in high school and middle school. They're playing a lot of games, and even from being kids, they're just playing and playing and playing and playing, and they just have so much practice, so much playing. Their bodies are getting destroyed, and so load management is super important for the future of the NBA, because I think load management is the way we're going to keep these star players from not getting injured.
I mean, like, you can talk about, so last year Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson were both injured in in Game 5 and Game 6, right? Yeah, towards the end of the playoffs, right? So I can probably argue that like the Kevin Durant injury was because he wanted to be rushed back. He didn't take proper recovery time, right? Or load management, whatever you want to call it. But then like the Gordon Hayward injury 2 years ago, that was just a freak accident, right? And those are going to happen. That Paul George injury where he broke his leg, that was a freak accident. Those are going to happen every single year.
Victor Oladipo,
exactly. Well, Victor Oladipo,
Joseph Nurkic,
exactly. Those are freak accidents, right? But like take the DeMarcus Cousins when he broke his Achilles. How much of that was because he was going for the rebound, or was the rebound the point that added stress that he had accumulated throughout the season being his
Not
size,
just this season, his entire career so far.
added to that one rebound being the reason why he fractured his Achilles.
The technology also has a lot to what's available to players has a lot to do with it as well. I mean, there's a lot more technology that players have that they have available to them right now that they didn't have even 5 years ago in terms of their access to it. Like LeBron James spends so much money on his health and his recovery and everything like that, and like not everybody does that. Most players should, but not everybody does.
Yeah, but saying LeBron James is a freak of nature. Like, he has perfectly controlled his body. Like, it's almost like going to like the extreme of someone who knows how to take care of themselves. And even LeBron James, with everything he does for his body, look at his injury last year.
He still takes rest days. I mean, when he first got into Cleveland, remember, he took like 2 weeks off.
And LeBron James takes in Cleveland, he was pretty much taking the regular season off. He was just cruising through it in order to not exert his body.
Because they could in the East.
And these players will figure out if the NBA ever does something where they don't allow players to rest, these players will figure out ways to rest in the game and stuff. Because my thing is, as a fan, I cannot tell these guys, you guys cannot rest. And I don't think the NBA has the right to tell these players that they cannot rest. Because we do not know what they're going through on a daily basis. They're the guys out there exerting their bodies, putting their bodies on the line every day playing basketball, right? And I cannot tell you Kawhi Leonard isn't in pain. There's no way that I can tell you that. The only guy that can tell you that is Kawhi Leonard. Right? So if a player decides to rest, all I can do as a fan is accept it. And every time I buy a basketball ticket, I have to know that I might risk a player resting.
And not even resting. It could be an injury. It can actually be a real injury. Like, what if you got tickets to a Boston Celtics game, hoping to see Gordon Hayward?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, say that was next week. Well, sorry, you're not going to see Gordon Hayward now. But he didn't choose to sit out, and a lot of times a lot of times players aren't necessarily choosing to sit out. But I mean, I think I'm personally fine with the NBA having a system in place where they fine the team set amount of money if they feel that they were arrested for a nationally televised game and that they were actually hurt, because the Clippers weren't going to be fined at all. The only reason they ended up being fined was because Doc Rivers said to a reporter that Kawhi Leonard feels great. So that contradicts the report that he's not necessarily feeling 100%.
He could have just said Kawhi Leonard feels great for tonight's game. He didn't feel great yesterday.
He said that after the game. Doc Rivers said that after the game.
I know, but Kawhi Leonard probably did feel great before that game. Kawhi Leonard's not resting. I feel like Kawhi Leonard's resting because he's being preventive. He's being precautious of all the injuries that he has had.
Precautious?
And the fact that he's being cautious, sorry. He's being cautious.
Precautious. I like it. No. We should keep that. I like that.
Well,
that's our new word.
Cautious.
Word of the day is precautious.
Precautious.
Think about it. Think about it.
It's being cautious, but being more cautious before being cautious.
Yeah.
Wait. Kawhi Leonard is being precautious.
That is technically true.
Because cautious is he's sitting out for the day because he has a sore right quad. That's cautious. Because you're worried that if you play, something's going to happen to your quad. Precautious is, man, I don't feel anything in my quad, but you never know. So I'm going to be cautious. I'm going to be cautious about being cautious.
I may be dehydrated, but I don't want to risk it. I may have had maybe cramping up. I may be dehydrated, but I don't want to risk it. But I would think I don't know if I don't know why I feel like I've heard this before, but I feel like somebody said oh, would you prefer them not to rest them and instead force them to play say 20 minutes in the game, or maybe what if they played the first quarter and then they he sprained his ankle.
No, like I said,
no, you don't want.
You can't force anybody to do something because, like I said, we don't know what's actually going on with their bodies.
Exactly.
I mean, also, if I'm the Clippers, it doesn't matter what anyone says. This guy is the best player in the NBA. He left the team because of injury. He won a championship last year, resting. And he came to your team with the promise that you were going to rest him and you were going to load manage him. I mean, that guy could be like, I'm only playing 50 games this year, so I can be ready for the playoffs, and he's only playing 48. Like, I am being pre-cautious with him.
That's what I was saying. He plays 48 games because they're being precautious.
Word of the day.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
But my thing is like, if he sits out the Bucks, right? If he sits out against the Bucks, okay, but don't play against, like, the Knicks.
Were you gonna say the Suns?
I was gonna say the Suns, but I'm like, they're not that bad anymore, right? Like, they're halfway decent now. But no, but like, so the Knicks, for instance, like, don't play, like, if you're gonna sit against anybody, like, you sit against a team like the Knicks. You don't sit against a team like the Jazz that are good, or against the Bucks, who a lot of people may want to see and are good as a team. But I think overall, load management, it's a topic that a lot of people are discussing now, and will probably be discussed again at some point during the season. But I think there's other things besides necessarily load management, in the sense that the NBA and the players themselves can do to try to prevent some of these injuries.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna find an answer to it at the moment, and I also don't think it's that big an issue as it's kind of coming out to be. I think that the NBA is doing great, and for now, it should just keep doing what it's doing, and as the one league that is very progressive with its players and the ability and the way that it communicates with its community.
Yeah, so I guess, I feel like the load management really just Kawhi. Let him do what he does. He knows his body. At the end of the day, the goal is to win a championship. So you just got to do what's best for you. And I think if we start seeing a trend where more players are resting, then the NBA does have to do something. Whether it be lower the amount of time in a game, maybe play more games, try to stretch the season out a little more so there's less back-to-backs, or start finding players for resting. I don't know, but it does suck for a fan, but I also understand it from the player's point of view. It is their body, and they're trying to extend their career and get ready for the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think that, load management's a nice way to go about things sometimes. And, it's not just in basketball. It could be in podcasting as well. So, we're 48 minutes or less, and we try to make sure we're always 48 minutes or less.
Exactly.
Load management.
We're trying to manage the load. We're not trying to bore you too much.
So thanks for listening this week to 48 Minutes or Less NBA Podcast. As always, please rate and review. We read all feedback, and please share this podcast with your friends. It'll really help us grow so we can continue to bring you guys some great content. Have a good night.
Have a good night, guys.
Bye.
Thank God we didn't call it 48 minutes or less, no editing.